Welcome back. Today we're going to be building up this beautiful resin printed Willy Wagon body from WTMicro on Etsy. And the only thing that we're going to need to make it happen is this right here. Well, truth be told, I've actually built one or two SCX24s, and I think, if memory serves, we're going to need a few more parts. So what do you say we jump into this and see if we can't build ourselves up a Willy Wagon? Okay, you may be wondering what makes this body so unique versus the others I've already built, besides the fact that it's obviously a wagon. Well, I think to more clearly articulate the differences, you know what? I'm gonna whip out my Willy.
Builds, that is. What did you guys think I meant? Come on, get your head out of the gutter. All right, moving right along. So on the right, I've got my prior Resto Mod Willy truck, and on the left, I've got my prior cheat code cab only Willy build. So why don't we dive in, take a closer look at the differences in these three bodies. We've got the lineup here, and as you can see, they're all pretty similar here. The differences really start to occur after that front door. So we'll come in a little closer to this full body truck version, but you can see on the truck, when you hit the bed, it actually steps in from the cab width. And that's the major difference here on this wagon. We're gonna be dealing with a lot wider rear end, if you will. So I'm gonna just slap this over the top and we can kind of compare, but you can see how much wider we are on each side. I would say that's probably 3 millimeters per side-ish, as a guess. But this guy is sitting on stock axles with wheels that have some negative offset, but these are only like 55 millimeter tires, and it is just right there at this inset bed line. So that's a big consideration here, is axles and tire size. So let's pull over the cheat code that actually has some Super 8s. So you can see how much more width this guy has. It's running much larger tires. So I think fitting these axles under this would be, a super easy solution, at least to run a larger set of tires. Pull this in view a little more. But I think I'm gonna do a quick body swap mock-up and we'll get a better sense of maybe how this will look on either one of these kind of setups here. Figured I'd do the easy mock-up first. Quick mount here with that cab only onto the cheat code. So this fit right on those sliders as well. Of course, there's no rear body support. And this does have deadbolt rear links. You can see that stretch, which actually gives this guy an insane departure angle. But definitely is clearing the rear end as far as the body width. Looks like at a full flex, it would be just kind of right at the body. See if we can get it without the body shifting too much. Kind of right there. Actually thought these Super 8s would look a little bit wider on this guy, and these are some negative offset, mid deep dish wagon wheels here. But that gives you the idea of what this guy would look like sitting on some, 62 millimeter, tires. Pretty beefy. I don't know if that's the look I want for this build. Definitely kind of more of a comp style wagon, I guess. But I think now let's do the more difficult body swap. I've actually got to unplug some wires, take out a little hinge pin, and we'll get this onto the narrow axle build. And here we have the tiny tire narrow build option. And you can see it's sitting up kind of on the sliders, and that's due to a little conflict in the rear. A little difference in the bodies from this to the truck, and we'll get into that in a second. But I've got it kind of lined up here, centered on the wheel well. This is C10 Bronco wheelbase with a little stretch caster up front. But it looks pretty good. But even with these 55s, it looks like they're going to be hitting that fender in the back. Front, of course, is no problem. We can set that up all day. It's pinched. But I don't know. I'm kind of digging the small tire look of it. And maybe I'll go down this small tire road. This seems like it's going to be more challenging of the two. I think some +4 axles, maybe some ES +5s would be perfect on here. I do have a set, but I've kind of got them earmarked for something else. So I think we're gonna start with the initial mock-up, I think, on stock width axles here. Let's continue on taking a closer look at these differences here. So as I said earlier, the fitment on the frame is a little different on this guy. You can see it's got the hinge molded to the body, and this one does as well, but they are set up a little differently. So this one aligns with the frame. It's set up to run one of those kind of aluminum cross pieces in the LCG frame across the rear as the hinge point. And then you can see this one here on the wagon is actually wider. So it actually locks into its own piece that hangs off of the frame, because now he is setting up these bodies for his own LCG chassis kit, which is kind of right here. So you get the front shock mount and magnet mount option that mounts to the frame. I guess it would slot in, I guess, that way. And then you've got the rear, very similar, but you can see it's got the drop down built-in hinge here. So instead of that through bar, you get some hardware for that hinge point, and then of course you get sliders to work with the body shape, and then he provides magnets as well. But you'll notice something on the inside here. There's kind of a little tray area. So let's take a look at the few other parts this guy comes with. So just like the typical Willy versions, you get the headlight bezels and the printed lenses, and those look really good, as you can see painted up there behind. But because this is a wagon, it comes with some rear tail light options, and you can see a little indent there. And yes, you get some printed lenses for those rear spots as well. Looks like I got quite a few extras. So those guys, you've got to cut them off the sprue yourself. And speaking of sprue, one thing these do not come with is an interior. So you get a dashboard here, you get a steering wheel, you get an interior kind of tray here with a steering wheel mount, and you get your seat back as well. So that is really nice. So it leaves kind of the middle open. So if you've got a motor popped up, you've got that free space there, but just a next level of detail. And tell you what, this looks really nice as always. So just super excited that he's gone to this next level on these guys by adding a little bit of interior. So that is super cool. And then, like I said earlier, there's this kind of ridge around the back here, and I guess part of it here may help hold that interior tray. But I picked up one other thing that will fill in that spot, and that is this guy. So this is a wood bed insert, and you can see it's got the cutouts here for the shock towers to stick up through. But this is from Carnage RC Gear, and they are on Etsy. But just great little products. I've purchased from them before, but they make things custom for the micro SCX24 world, and I think some other vehicle brands as well. But check them out anyway. So this is gonna have a little retro kind of bed look to it. I guess we'll go this way with those mounts forward. Let's see if we could just mock it in here. So it looks like a nice little fit. So we'll see about coloring that up, staining it, something like that for the build. But anyways, that is the kind of the main differences here from the wagon to the truck to the cab only. And I think now that we've taken kind of a thorough look at all three of these, it's time to start the build. Starting out, figured we'd go over the parts and pieces I'm going to use to assemble this slider, at least the mock-up here, and see what we end up with. So nothing out of the ordinary here too much, but I do have a couple things to look at. I've got this OGRC brass skid. So I picked this up when it came out, and it's fairly unique. It's got these extensions beyond the frame here, as you can see. So it gives you a little more kind of slider edge there. And this is brass, so it weighs in at, I believe, 39 grams. So pretty heavy. And it looks like from mocking it up that this is going to work with these sliders.
And it looked like that may be a nice transition for this, good application, and because of the body weight, be nice to have a little low weight to plant that wagon. So that is kind of a new part for me. And then the axle here, it's got a few new parts as well. One of those being this Poor Boys RC servo. So I have not used this guy before. And just like the diff covers, it's got the guy pulling his pockets out, pretty funny. A couple of nice features here on this servo. You can see the chamfered edge, top and bottom. So it gives you a little more space for that hardware head at full throw. So that's a nice feature. Speaking of full throw, you can see these knuckles are just slammed here, turned. So inside this brass Poor Boys RC housing, I've got some exo.us U-joints in there. Those are the titanium CVD style, but those give you the 55 degrees. So this is looking just like a MIS axle or an X15 as far as steering. So very nice there. And then the knuckle ends are the heavyweight 18-gram trio brass knuckles. So very nice front axle assembly, ready to go. And then specs of this servo are pretty nice as well. I'm not sure the voltage yet, but any way I go, it's gonna be very powerful. And then I believe I put overdrive in this front axle. I'll have to check some photos. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've assembled that guy. But for the links in the back, I've got pre-assembled Mazz design stainless steel links. These are the ones with the high offset rod ends here. So those help with getting these going in the right direction and lessening any bind on the joint. So those are nice as always. So I think pretty cut and dry here. Besides that, stock axle, ramp crab, adjustable link riser, and brass diff cover from Mazz as well. So I've got a little work to do to get a slider together. We'll come back and see how this guy shapes up. All right, well, we haven't even gotten the shocks on, and you can see we're already riding dirty. So we're pretty donked out here, leaning to the rear, nice and centered up, however, on the wheel well, but you can see this front end cannot compress. But I wanted to go ahead and test fit this body on here, really just to get a sense of where the servo horn was in relation to the grill. And you can see we're right there, kind of resting on it. And even with the body forward, kind of clearing it, it still won't drop down. So we are right now set up with just stock JLU C10 length, no adjustments yet. So we're running into this similar problem that most Jeeps have, the JLUs. It's these little pieces right here at the end, but on the JLUs, that's actually the bumper mount that comes off the front. And you can see it's hitting these servo tabs. So when you put a larger servo in, you start having this clearance issue. But of course, these guys are the front supports for the shock mounts. So usually I'll kind of Dremel some plastic off of that, but I don't think I want to do that here. So I'm hoping some caster adjustment and some lean to that servo can get these tabs leaning back. And then we'll probably just have the side frame C channels to clearance out with the Dremel wherever these tabs end up hitting. But you can see now that's not going to work. So unlike the other kits that were set up for the carbon fiber LCG frames, you didn't have this piece that came forward, so you could just chop the frame off. And that's exactly what I did on those. So I didn't have this issue at all for clearance. But I don't think it'll be too hard to solve. The way I'm thinking about doing it here is a way I've done it before recently on a JLU. So these are deadbolt front uppers. So you can see they're just super short, very tiny, too short to put in here as they are. But what I did before is space these guys out on each end, I think with the thicker spacers here, which are these guys. These are those Djcrawler aluminum ones. And that gave me the perfect amount of length to lean that servo back. And I believe I kicked the lowers out a little bit. So I think that's the direction I'm going to start with this guy. Go ahead and do a little link swap and adjustment, see if we can't get that servo sitting back and actually getting up into the frame there. Now that's starting to look like a Willy Wagon. So you can see we're not so kicked up in the front anymore. So obviously some things solved up there. Body's sitting nice and level on these sliders. One nice thing about those LCG shock tower mounts, they recess the body side magnets. So where this is sitting right now is an accurate height of that body. So no need to mock in extra magnets to get a ride height.
And you can see I got the shocks in, filled with oil, nice and cushy as always. So why don't we take a closer look at this front end before I get the body off. We'll look at this servo horn clearance. So that's giving me some room for the LEDs that'll come out of the back of those lights, top and bottom there. So you don't want to get too close, but it looks like I'm going to have plenty of room here. So let's take a closer look at this front end work. It involved quite a bit more Dremel work than I thought. So I ended up, as I said, hitting the frame. Then I had to hit the knuckles for the shocks. Then I actually had to hit the upper links for the servo. Then I actually also had to hit the upper servo tab points on each side. So that looks like that gave me what I needed. So I can definitely get right down the middle here with the new caster. I'm avoiding these front mounts that were kind of hitting those tabs, and you can see the lean of that servo. It's nice and low. So we're not getting up above the top of that LCG mount, so we shouldn't hit the top of the hood. So that looks like that's going to work there. And the critical thing was kind of making sure we had twist here. You know, if you were compressed here, you weren't going to hit those tabs. So that's why those guys kind of had to come off. There may be still a little conflict here. The axle never sits perfectly center. There's some wobble. You can see just some give here. So it's always dependent on real world, but I think I'm 99% happy with those clearances now and really digging the caster. So you can see I did use those spacers on the deadbolt uppers. So that is 6 millimeters overall. So a 2 and a 1 on each end. And then the lowers, I think I kicked out about 1 millimeter. So it gave me a little push forward on the bottom, but a nice caster angle there. So pretty happy, looks like a nice even ride height. So typically at this point, we would roll into filling in this empty center section. But I think since this build is all about fitment and this wide rear end here and tire size, I think we're gonna roll into wheels and tires so we can get kind of an accurate mock-up and actually start looking at some clearances here. Well, I just couldn't be happy with 99%. So you can see I went back to clearancing this guy a little bit there for the servo ear, and then back here for the actual servo cord coming out. And then I went back to the frame and kind of hit that top C channel on the driver's side, corresponding basically to that little cutout there. So hopefully that will let that servo tab kind of slide by there perfectly now, but I'm gonna get it back together and we'll see. I think we have achieved 100% clearance on this front end. So after those little adjustments, look at that motion, nice and smooth. So no more hang up there on this driver's side that it was getting right there. I think a key too is getting that little bit of clearance at the bottom of this shock mount for the servo cable. You can see at full compression, we just clear it. So that was hitting before. So very happy with those little tweaks there. So now I'm 100% happy with the motion of this guy. And then as I was into that, I noticed on the shocks, I wasn't getting full turning here. So I clearanced earlier, as you saw, for the actual hardware head at this lower shock mount. But you can see I took off quite a bit more. I was actually hitting the plastic part of the lower shock mount. Let me see if I can hold this up and we can see now, but you can see here, getting all the way to it. Same on this one. There you go, good view of it there. Getting super close on the front axle. Same over here. So I think I've got those pretty even as far as the throw. I think I'm pretty much maxed out, but very happy with that. So I think now we can get kind of back on track to what we originally planned to do, which was fit some wheels and tires on this thing. All right, so for wheels, I'm looking for something with a pretty negative offset. So I've got these wide deep dish Djcrawler kind of vintage style wheels. These are fairly new, found these on Amazon, but I think these will fit the bill pretty well and give some added width to those stock axles, which will be needed. And then for the tires, we're breaking out the little guys, not literally,
actually the Power Hobbies, but these are the MTs. Got these nice and washed up, very nice sticky compound as always from Power Hobby. But these I believe are around the 48mm range, so nice little shorties here. So I figure the first thing we want to do before we get these all mounted up is see what the weight of one of these rims is. Zero that out. So that is about 31 grams there, minus 4 pieces of hardware, I guess, that aren't installed. So that's probably pretty accurate, about 31 grams. So a pretty heavy little wheel here. So it's definitely gonna help keep this guy planted just a little more. You can see these guys also come with some TRX4M hexes with the large diameter hole here. But of course, we're not gonna be using those. But as always, great looking wheels from Djcrawler, great price. And without any more talking, I'm gonna get these guys mounted up. Are you seeing this? This thing is looking so hard. You hear what I'm saying? My Willy is hard. But in all seriousness, these worked out just great here. I guess let me flip it around to the non-birthmark side. A little bit cleaner. But man, just killer look with these super wide deep dish and these fatty little short tires, filling them out just perfectly. Just a great look right there. Let me get it off the stand. We can look at the clearances here a little bit better. But ran into one little snag on the rear end, not much of a snag, but on full twist here, I was hitting the fender, and you can see I'm nice and free spinning there, just barely. And I solved that with my trusty solution I go to a lot here, these +1 hexes. These are LGRP, Samix makes these as well, but super, super handy for little bits of tuning like that. So that got these clear. The front is a little different story. So it looks like full twist, we're gonna be hitting that fender just barely. And of course, at a full kind of twist up, we're getting into the fender, we're probably touching the shock, but that'll be dependent on where I kind of limit that steering. But can't complain too much. I feel like if I put a +1 hex on there, it may get it out of the shock, but I feel like it's just gonna push me into that fender a little bit quicker. But can always do a little more adjusting later. Got some more of those hexes, so man, just overall pretty happy with the look of it, and feel like the suspension is just working out awesome here with the wheels and tires, better than expected. So I'm not sure what we're gonna do next, but I'm gonna figure something out. This just keeps getting better and better. So obviously I did figure out what was next, and that was paint and body work. So why don't we take a quick look at that process, and then we'll come back and get into this guy in a little more detail. All right, so as you saw, not a ton of work went into detailing, but a little bit of effort is needed, I guess. And you can see just came out beautiful here on the body detailing. I used a little flat black to pick up these little pieces. Got that dry brush 4-wheel drive on there, super nice as always. Used some aluminum to pick up these little bolts, and a little bit of aluminum on the back as well for the keyhole, and then these little hinges at the bottom. It's got this nice little license plate light, I guess it would be. So I've got a scale plate I need to pick out and order for that guy, but really happy with it overall. Of course, you don't see some of that detailing on the interior too much for the dash, but you kind of get a sense of it there. And then the wood is not glued in there, it's just test fit for now. But I did kind of play with a finish that I'm thinking about, kind of a distressed wood, maybe reclaimed kind of wood look. So something maybe light to go in there. It's not like a brown or anything. So it's kind of looking at a white gray wash, but hopefully something good will come of that when I finally get to actually putting it on there. But I think it came out really good. And of course,
black trim, black light bezels, went for the Resto Mod appearance. And then I finished this guy, rather than a flat clear coat, I used that semi-gloss just to give it a tad bit of sheen. And I think, man, just super happy with it. Came out really good. So I think the next thing we're gonna get into is all the underbody chassis tweaks I did in the meantime while I was painting. Really reworked the front end and did a little tweaking on the rear end. So let me get this shell off and we'll get into that a little more. Okay, before I get this body fully pulled off, I'll give you a little peek inside at this interior. So the way I got this in was starting with the black tray without the seats glued on. So I put a little shoe goo on the ledge here, and basically that sits on the ledge, and then the edges basically friction fit in there super nice. So I kind of had a little flexibility for a little bit of time there. So I got the dash kind of squeezed down in there, just dry fit, made sure the interior black tray was level, got that all situated where I wanted, and then just let that back seam set up for a little while. Let me pull this body off now. And then I came back after this seam was dry and ran a weld, a weld, a weld here, and then a weld there at the dash. So I've got all those pieces connected, and then at the end I came on, put the steering wheel, and then got the seat shoe gooed in there. But not too hard at all, just, you know, I like shoe goo because it gives you a little time, a little flexibility while it cures. So, you know, not hard at all, but you can see this just fits perfectly. There's no ledge to catch it, so it kind of gets in there and wants to just hold. But, you know, definitely wanted to add some glue to make a, you know, a permanent hold for it. And then we're ready for the wood in the rear, but came out super nice. Really digging this insignia white with that black panel line. I think it really pops it, all the black trim. But let's take a look here at the chassis, I guess. Let me get this back up on the stand for us. So the problem I was running into was I still just wasn't happy with this tire hitting the fender. Really wanted to get the axle further forward. So you notice those top links are back to the Mazz links. So I started stretching these even further, and that's about as far as I was comfortable with, and they were really not too much off from the stock ones. So I put the stock ones back on there and played with this front end 2 or 3 times and the shock positions. And I ended up lengthening the fronts a little bit, the front uppers. You can see there, they've got some thread showing. And then the rear I took out, or the lowers, I took out even more. So I moved the whole axle forward and I tried to maintain some caster there. And I think I did. You can see that servo leans back. But one thing I did was basically took a little down travel out. I had these shocks way back here leaned. So part of that was getting them out of the wheels at full twist. Get this off the stand. So when we go full twist and full compression, we're missing them now. So that's just perfect. We're still sitting level, and really all it did was limit a little dropout since they're not leaned, and that's fine. I don't need a lot of dropout in the front, but still getting down pretty low. So I went to the rear for an adjustment as well, and you can see here that was the gold shocks, or the gold springs, excuse me. Those are the mediums, I guess. So it gave me a little more support. I was getting some sag, I guess, with the body and the roof on there and the wood. So that's gonna help keep it level now with everything on there. It kind of sits up high on its own, but it will level out. And then the other tweak I made to all the shocks was putting the thin spacers at the top and the wide at the bottom, because these were conflicting with the wood. And then on the front, I was actually getting, I was hitting the fender edges here because I moved these shocks, I guess, forward and up more. So these bolts were catching that fender head or edge. So these went to 1 millimeter spacers rather than 3. And then I don't think I have any on the bottom here, but it still gives me a little kick out at the rear, or at the bottom, I guess. And then these give me a nice kick out at the bottom. So all the suspension now is working out really well. I've got the full servo clearance up front that I had. So no conflict here. That's all working out nicely. Full travel, very smooth. And the key thing is I'm out of the shock.
And by moving that axle forward, I am basically out of the fender now. Let me see if I can mock this on. There we go. That's about where it rides. So if I twist it fully and compress it, look at that. I'm right there. I mean, that's as good as it gets. I can still spin it. I'm missing the shock. So it also got me better approach angle, getting these tires up closer to the grill nose. But I think that's where I'm gonna leave it for now. And the big reason that I needed to do all this, especially the body work, was getting this interior tray in, and that is gonna be key for sizing up a motor and getting the transmission in there, making sure all of that is gonna fit nicely underneath that tray. So I think that's the next thing we're gonna do, is look at getting a motor and transmission in this guy. Before we move on, I wanted to mention one thing I forgot that was pretty critical in reworking that front end, and that was moving this servo from the front position to the middle, scooting that guy back, and you can see, looks like I'm just gonna squeak by with the hardware head and that diff. I thought I was gonna have to move the drag link to the front, but it doesn't look that way, and that's a good thing because I'm pretty dang close to that front grille now. And of course, we don't have any LEDs in there in the lower pods here, but it looks like that is about as close as you can get without hitting anything. So that was definitely key, and had to lose a little caster because that servo is further back, and the back edge of the servo, the bottom of it, can rest on the top of the links at full down travel. So that's basically where I am now. So I've got my full travel, no binding, but really couldn't drop out any further than that without the servo just stopping it on its own. So that was another little key there. But I think, man, I am really happy with the way it's all working now. So I think now let's move on to the motor. Now don't get too excited. This guy's gonna have his very own build video to focus fully on it. But the reason I've got it out here is I've been bringing both of these builds up together in tandem, and that is due to the motor fitment in each of these. They both have a dashboard, they both have an interior, so I knew there was gonna be some struggle in fitment on these guys. And I had some thoughts initially, but now I'm kind of rethinking that after looking at them. So initially I thought the Brute had a lower interior tray, but I think it's just because of the cut of the door. After getting this one in, you can see it does sit, you know, about the same height across here. So that may throw a wrench in the gears, so to speak, of what I had planned. So I wanted to do a forward-facing Nanobam, thinking it had a little more headroom in this one. And then I was gonna do the standard mount Nanobam that tucks it nice in that stock position, real low there. So I know that would probably work. But, you know, plans change, so I may have to rob this guy to keep this guy brushless if that's what's needed. I also have a Mofo RC brush motor that I can always fall back to, kind of change gears, if you will, a little bit and go brushed. But I think the first thing is gonna be mounting up this Nanobam in the forward-facing position, get it in the truck, see if that body will even close. And that's gonna tell us something right there. Well, this is not looking good. So it looked like the transmission mount was gonna set the motor too high anyways, but I went ahead and mounted it, and you can see it's hitting right here on this front cross mount that is the magnet mount. So there's really no way that's gonna fit. There's no way, even if the transmission's seated, it would come close to tucking under this guy. This is kind of a full thickness piece here that goes across as a brace, and the depth to hold the magnets as well. So I don't wanna get into that piece. So it looks like we're gonna toss this guy out. Even flipping it, the reverse direction, no difference because the seats are at the same height. They're sitting on that same black tray, so there's really no difference forward or backwards. You do get a little height for the transmission kind of hump to stick up, but you've still got to tuck that motor. So I think we're gonna go to the standard mount option next for this Nanobam, see if that's gonna work, and we'll go from there. I think this is the way. So you can see I've got the body fully closed. So there we are. Looks like it's gonna fit just about perfectly. So there is a little contact, it looks like, potentially with the motor. So it looks like this tray may be sitting right on top of it. But again, we're sitting just perfectly level on these sliders. So it's really hard to know without getting the two magnets up here in their final position. That may
lift this up just a hair, because really it's just like a millimeter it needs, if any. So I think for now, I'm gonna move forward with the install, get the magnets in, see if I can't finalize this a little bit better. And then I think worst comes to worst, could potentially be just a little bit of sanding drum work on this area right here on the black plate. But it doesn't look like it would need much, if any. So that's good news. I think we're gonna be able to stay brushless on this build. And I think I need to order another standard mount for that Jeep Brute. Well, leave it to a little mock-up test fitting here, and I think we are good. So I went ahead and just dropped these in here, dry fitted them, and you can see the top sticks up about 1 millimeter from this black surface. So that appears to be perfect. So I don't know if you can see, the motor looks dropped down a little. There's a shadow line it looks like we're getting here that we weren't. So to me, it looks like it's not touching, and I can spin it and it doesn't feel like it's getting any resistance. The only true way to know is to get out the electronics, plug this guy up and test it with the body closed, see if we can hear any kind of conflict, any kind of rubbing on that tray. But it looks like, fingers crossed, this is gonna work perfectly. Speaking of electronics, thought this would be a good time to run through what I'm planning on using here. So I've got a little micro receiver for the FlySky GT5, little 5-channel crossover RX. So this is their AR52 A2 Plus model, and I'll put a little graphic on the screen of how to plug this guy up. There are no bind buttons, it's auto bind mode, so you just hold the bind on your transmitter as you turn it on the first time, and you should be good to go. Then on the right, we've got Mofo RC's Rockwolf ESC. This is a 32-bit, nice little unit here. I've used that quite a few times. It comes preset for the Nanobam, which is what we're using, so no tweaks really needed. You do need to plug it up to your computer with the program card to set the low voltage cutoff. So I've already done that, and then it does not come with any battery extension. So since we're using 3S, I've got a little JST jumper here, and I pulled out the smallest footprint battery that I own, which is this little Hard Part 200. I do have some Palm Power 180s that are a little bit larger than that, but basically the same, height. So they look like they could both fit, so there may be some options there. That'll definitely be the challenge on this one. But that's the electronics here, so I think while we're waiting on the glue to dry on magnets, I think I'll do a little detailing on that wood. Again, this thing just keeps getting better and better. So that came out just great. I mean, exactly kind of how I was wanting it. Kind of weathered, reclaimed, just worn, kind of painted and scuffed off, beech wood, I don't know, just a nice light color, just not the brown wood stain. So I really like that. Just super easy to do and came out great. So I've got that glued in, a little shoe goo, and then of course I've got the magnets in. So we're ready to get this guy mounted up, get those electronics plugged up, and give that motor a spin up. So I figured we'd start with a quick test of the motor, and then we'll get to the moment of truth of fitment here. Just nice and quiet, nice and smooth. Man, that feels good. Don't really see any kind of stutter at all at any kind of transition area. Sounds really good, so I think that's gonna work well. So let's get this body shut. And man, talk about like 1 millimeter of clearance at those shock towers. That wood fits in there perfectly. So now, I don't know if we can get a good view. There it is, peeking out right there.
Sounds fine. Definitely have the clearance. Don't hear it rubbing at all. Perfect. Perfect. So that magnet being raised up 1 millimeter was exactly the right design element. So thank you, Matthew. That worked out perfectly just to squeak that little brushless motor in there. So I think that is proof of concept now. So now we're going to get to the challenge phase of actually stuffing these tiny little components into a tinier little space. And a lot of the issue is due, of course, to this interior tray. So that is really killing the headroom and limiting battery choice. But you know me, I'm gonna take on the challenge and I'm gonna add more to it because I've got lights in mind. So there's gonna be LED strings in there as well. So lots to think about here, but super happy so far with the motor going as planned. I think I'm gonna get the drive shafts in there, do a little test myself, make sure the axles are all smooth, and get the roof glued on, and then electronics. One thing I forgot to do is look at this little servo here. So I'm not sure what that is, why that's beeping. Oh, maybe the motor cable's just not in there very tight. That's probably what it was. But I've got the servo adjusted already. Of course, I haven't spun the axles, but I guess just by hand, but shouldn't be any binding. Yeah, so I don't know what that little cutout, seems like it keeps cutting off, but of course I just do have everything hanging here, so I'll investigate that a little further to make sure there's no issues, but so far it seems like it's all working unless there is some further issue here. Well, there may be some troubleshooting ahead for me. So let me get this guy turned on. So of course we've got the receiver solid light, it's on. You heard the motor beep. And as we saw earlier, giving the motor the beans, no issues, no cutout. Perfect. So only when I tested the servo, and it looks like at a normal kind of steering speed, there is no issue, kind of a slow, but as soon as I want to kind of test the speed and turn it fast, look at that. So every time I jiggle the servo fast, it cuts out. So there's some issue there. I'm not sure what it is. Could be the servo, could be the micro receiver. I don't think it is the ESC, but I do have some spare Rockwolf ESCs I can swap in. So I think the first thing I'm gonna do is swap out another receiver, just check it there, see if it is doing the same thing, and that may be pointing to the servo. I can always swap out that ESC as well, but really the ESC really shouldn't have too much to do with the servo functionality. I mean, that's coming out of the receiver. I guess it's the BEC off of that. That's the only thing. I mean, I don't know. So anyways, a little bit of troubleshooting ahead, and I will come back and kind of see what I find here after swapping out some components. But hopefully I can solve this issue without too much of a headache. Okay, I've got a 6-channel receiver bound up, swapped in. I don't appear to be getting any cutout with the crazy jiggle. I don't have the steering reset. Let me just take this off so I don't mess anything up. So we're not getting any disconnect from the receiver, no cutout, no beeping from the motor. So not sure what it is with that other little micro receiver. I can do a little more investigating. I'm not sure if I'll be able to fit this guy in the build, so I may have to solder up a little 4-channel, but I was really wanting the 5 channels the way I was thinking about doing lighting. But anyways, you know, always something, right? You can never have a smooth build. All right, I got this little micro 4-channel soldered up, ready to go. So let's give this guy a test here. And we're on, and I'm gonna have to pick this up since I can't get full steering on this stand. Motor's still great. Look at that, looks like a little servo fade. Right there. Not too bad though, definitely not cutting out though. And I mean, typical crawling, I'm not gonna be just going nuts with it. But still, it seems to be pretty much working besides the fade. But the big thing is it's not turning on and off. That was gonna be unacceptable. So there is, looks like a little servo fade here and there. But as long as there's not a full disconnect, I mean, servos may have some fade here and there. This thing may just need a more powerful BEC, but I'm kind of surprised. This is a 3 amp, 6.5 volt BEC that's built into this Rockwolf. So I figured that could handle it. I think the minimum voltage on this is 6 volts, but I don't have another BEC handy. The only other rig I had set up with that micro 5-channel does have a BEC on it, so not an accurate comparison. I was gonna get that out and kind of double check with that one, but totally different setup there. So looks like for finishing out this build, we're gonna go with this little 4-channel, see if that's gonna work out. Gonna have to tweak my wiring, as I said, a little bit for the lighting, but that's how it goes.
Well, after much time, energy, and thought expended on trying to get electronics installed in this thing, I think this is gonna be a shelf queen roller. It's just super tight and I just couldn't get anything to work in there. So this guy is gonna be a very expensive static model. Not. Of course I got electronics in there, guys. Who are you talking to here? So I did have to go about this a little different than usual, and we'll go through it real quick. It did take quite a bit of thought on how to get this to fit in there, but the actual install was pretty quick and painless. And I only used 2 pieces of double-sided tape so far. So I've got a little piece right here to keep the servo cord up there on the transmission or motor mount hump. And then I've got 1 piece holding down the micro receiver right there. And the ESC is just set in place. And I actually used a little aluminum crossbar. I'll show a shot of that, but I put it right in there to some existing frame holes. And that gives enough backing so this guy, you know, won't fall through there. And it's just kind of wedged in here with the motor cables coiled. Let me get this turned back around. So everything's kind of friction fit in there, and then the battery sits on the slider. It's got the whole slider over here to situate. No Velcro, because like I say, this thing just pinches the battery under the little tray here down to the slider. So there's really no need for Velcro. There's no height for Velcro. That would push the battery up as well. So speaking of batteries, this is the one I kind of built this around. This is my other option here, this 180 Palm Power, but you can see it's a little wider. It's about the same height. That's actually a little taller because some Velcro, but that width is actually giving me a problem here as well. Got a little tuck-in area on the side here with that transmission. So this battery can slide kind of over the frame and get in here a little bit further. And so it's perfectly flush right here. And that 180 doesn't seem to want to do that. But speaking of battery fitment, let's get one in here and turn this guy on. So this is the procedure. It's gonna sit in there right there and get pinched down. And then the battery is just gonna sit kind of right here and get pinched when we close the lid. So you just kind of tuck it in there and close the lid on it. But of course, we need to turn it on first. Since this is loose, you can kind of pull it up, turn it on, get this pinched down here. Let's see if we can get it down where it's gonna look nice. And then it's kind of just close this down, get the balance in, and there we are. So we are down and shut, and you really don't see any cables. One thing I forgot to mention is I clocked that motor in a different direction to get the cable down. So you can see the cable doesn't stick up like it was before. It's nice and tucked over there on the slider, so you really don't see any wires at all sticking up. Let's get this guy off the stand now that we're actually drivable with drive shafts. So I went ahead and tested it with drive shafts on my own. No issues there. Looks like no cutout with the fast turning. And let's check out this creep. And that is no adjustment at all on that ESC. And look at that slow crawl. So I think we are ready now for stage 2 of the electronics. And just like that, stage 2 of the electronics is complete. All the lighting is in. So let's take a quick look at this grill before we get it lit up. Those lowers look really nice without having a little lens in there. You actually see the bulb. Can't really see anything with the other two since they do have lenses, but let's take a look inside. You can see the slack kind of has a little spot to live there in the back, a little hinge in the wire. And then I routed everything under the frame right here, except for the servo cable, which that may change, but right now it's all kind of tucking in there neatly, and that slack has plenty of room to live there. And the big consideration is just nothing touching this motor. So having this kind of routed at a 90 degree here around that gives plenty of space for the battery to kind of push in here a little bit. So pretty happy with that. But I think what we all want to see here is what these guys look like lit up. So let me get a battery in this guy. And wow, these look good. Check out these fronts. And those lowers look a tinge more yellow because they've got no lens, and I really dig that. Let's check out the clearance here at the frame. That's just nuts. So it is just right there at that wire bend. So you kind of have to get those at a 90 degree going straight up as you saw, but it seems to be a perfect fit. And then the rears look great. In real life, they are super bright red. They're very washed out, it looks like, on the camera. But let's get this guy off the stand and actually drive it a little bit here. Might as well. It's powered on, got a battery in it. Look at that thing, just beautiful. I feel like I need a kind of an Army medical badge on the side. It feels like it's almost got an ambulance vibe going. But man, I'm just digging that black and white. Great color combo, super resto mod, very classic. But I think that pretty much wraps everything in the build up. Oh, wait a minute. We haven't done any alternate wheels and tires. A couple of things I wanted to mention before we move on. First being the tail lights. So these housings in the body didn't fit the 3mm LEDs. So do all your test fitting before you get too far. And I did that before the roof was on or the bed was in, because I had to come back with the 1/8 bit and just by hand and kind of come at it at a 45. That's how these are aligned. And they're so tight to the vertical edge on these lenses, you know, I wouldn't try to drill it from the outside. In fact, I didn't drill it all the way through, just enough to get the bulbs to seat. But something you may have to kind of clear out as well. And then the other item, you'll notice if I set it down, we're sitting with a little rake now to the front. So I went ahead and swapped out the gold medium springs that were in the rear to the silver firmest. And the reason is because this guy has overdrive. So once this guy starts going, it sucks the rear end down. So this should help to level out. It was getting a little sag, and I also have more down travel in the rear. So already can get lower in the rear. So hopefully that little tuning tweak will keep this guy nice and level as it chugs along there. And I think it'll also help with the weight shift when it's climbing. All that is put on the rear springs at that point. So I think it's a good shift there. And then one little tweak I made, you'll notice on the wheels, went ahead and added in some Injora scale hubs. So a nice little detail, great little scale effect there. And man, I've been looking at these wheels and tires on this so long, I feel like it's gonna be hard to pick out some alternates. I'm really digging the deep dish, the wide Power Hobby tires. I'm really liking this MT tread pattern. It reminds me of the Goodyear Wranglers, kind of an asymmetrical pattern. But these are directional. Not sure if I've got them going the right direction. It looks like they could run equally in either direction. But just really like this combo. But I've also been test fitting quite a few other combos kind of in the interim breaks within this build. So I've got some bangers, I think, lined up. So I think we're gonna weigh this wheel tire combo, see where we're at, and then let's get to it. All right, got the Restomod Willy truck back out on the table here. And that is partly because I've been looking at this as a little bit of inspiration here. This is built around some very tiny tires. And it's funny, I was just watching 24 Yep's channel, and he did a little video on this tire brand, Alien Compound, Pitbull, and then Braven, I guess. So these are Braven Ironsides, but you can see little tiny, I guess 48 millimeter. These are on some Mazz Designs Vaders, matte black wheels. But this is a really good look here. And I know these would mount right up to that, so I'm not gonna copy those. And I've actually got another set here. These are actually the Pitbull rockers. So this is still that Alien Compound, super nice feeling, super sticky. So again, I think these will also mount right up. So not gonna use those either. But one of the goals here was trying to find a tire I had on hand without purchasing anything else. And as much as I wanted to just slap another set of Power Hobby, I think I've got some armors onto some more deep dish wheels, I started looking around here, and part of that was due to this truck, part of it is due to the wheels. So speaking of wheels, got some Djcrawler, some more Djcrawler. These are some that I've used before in their bright finish, which is what they only had forever. And then I got super excited and ordered these up. These are the black finish. And I got a little less excited when they got here, and I realized these are nowhere near black. But once I got this guy painted up, the excitement has returned. So this gray is looking really good against that insignia white. So for the tires, so the reason I got all this out here, so I've got one last set here of this Alien Compound. So these are Pitbull PBX ATs, and I haven't even pulled these out. I just cut these open, but you can see they are sticking to the package. It just tells you how gummy this compound is. So not washed up at all. I didn't even put any pressure on those. They won't even pick it up. Look at that. I mean, it's just sticking to that. So super sticky and a very, very thin compound. So they have a really stiff foam in these, which I think they do need for some sort of support. But you can see these are nice, skinny, 48 millimeters, maybe a little too skinny just sitting like that. So, you know me, I've only got 2 out. So of course I've done a little test fitting and I've got a couple mounted up here, and you can see they are sitting on the stock foams. They got a nice little bulge to them. So these are actually on some uncut Crawler Innovations foams. So a full medium and actually a full firm because of the weight of this guy. But these feel super nice. The rings are vented, so the tires are not. Got just super compliance here, but support in the sidewall. And then of course, got 2 rates here, so I guess this is the medium. It's definitely feeling a little bit softer. But I think these look really good. They're gonna kind of take this Willy Wagon back to right off the dealership floor, kind of stock look here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the other 2 mounted up here and get them on the truck. And man, wait till you see them. What did I say? Straight off the showroom floor. Look at that. I'm loving this stalker look. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the deep dish, especially the wide tire look, but sometimes the narrow pizza cutter is the way. Man, I think these just look fantastic on here. That gray really makes the insignia white go less white and I guess more gray than having the black wheels on there. But man, it just looks really good, nice and subdued. So let's look at some of these clearances here. Got this servo horn disconnected, but it looks like these tiny little tires are perfect. So just right there. And let's look at the nose. Full lock, full twist, still got a little room. And then of course, let's check the rear. Looks like we are right there at the fender. Guess I need to lift this up and see. Let's see if we can get any twist. Yeah, definitely got some wiggle there. So these tires are the exact size, it looks like, that they need to be. They could potentially be a hair taller in the front, but I don't know if they really could be on those rear, you know, the rear with the fender well right there. I don't know, they kind of start to slip by it there. So the offset of these wheels may allow for, you know, 52 millimeter maybe. I want to say these are a little taller than 48s. Maybe these are 50s. I'll have to put that on the screen. But all in all, I think it definitely works as a nice kind of stock look here. So initially I was going to go all black with the Restomod theme, but I'm glad the so-called black wheels ended up being gray because that kind of led me down some different colorways. So speaking of that, let's take a look at this third set. Surprise, surprise, some more Djcrawler. So yeah, I like their wheels. So we've got a new style from them, and this is one I was a little iffy on with the internet coloration, but in person, the bronze is really nice looking. So this is just what they're calling their 8-spoke, but a nice deep dish. So as wide as those black deep dish, no difference there. Probably the same weight as well. So again, I've gone ahead and I've done a little fitment here, little tire selection. So what are we gonna wrap around those? So obviously we're using some Crawler Innovations again, a medium and soft, a half cut here on these. But what are we putting them on? So we've got some Injora Mud Paws. So these are new-ish from Injora. These are 53s, but a nice kind of chunky, tractor-ish almost, kind of, I don't know, definitely a mud terrain. But these seem to stretch around these deep dish nicely, and although they're 53s, they seem to be fitting with the offset of these deep dish, I guess, and maybe the fact that these are maybe a hair shorter being stretched. But from test fitting 2 on there and looking at clearances earlier, they appeared to work. So 53 is quite a jump up from 48, but I don't know. Let's get the other 2 mounted up and we'll see, double check these clearances. But gosh, take a look at the stock foam here. It is just minuscule. So half foam is all that these need. It's a little stiffer due to just the tread pattern versus these guys needing a whole foam for support. But they feel good, the 2 in the mock-up here, so I'm gonna go that route. So I'm gonna finish up getting these mounted and we'll come back see what they look like.
You know when a tire just looks mean? Well, I think I found the perfect level of aggression from a Willy Wagon in these mud paws. Something about that tread pattern just gives it that old school, almost a farm truck kind of look, but just perfect for this kind of 50s, 60s era wagon. And man, those bronze wheels do not disappoint. As always, bronze just looks so stellar. Let's set this down. Just fantastic. So let's check the clearances here with these slightly larger tires, but I think we're gonna just squeak by. So we do at full lock there. Let's get twist. So a tiny bit of rubbage at twist, but it looks like we are gonna be basically right there at the shock. So definitely a good move, leaning those shocks up a little bit more. And then let's check the nose clearance and the rear as well. Let's twist it up here. So I'm guessing, look at that, just clearing the nose. So that is nice. I thought we'd be hitting there. And then the rear, let's see if we can't get it straight on here. Look at that. Wiggle like a worm. So somehow these 53s are just snaking by perfectly, but I'm glad they are because they definitely fit the look of this thing. Those are just sick right there. And the more I've been looking at this, the more I'm thinking I may need to swap some gold springs up front for a little more support as well. And I can always kind of tuck the ride height back down with some rubber bands potentially just to keep it lower. But I don't know, maybe it's time for a little tabletop test and see how this thing actually drives. All right, so one last look at the 3 setups here for the Willy Wagon, and I think they all look fantastic. So drastically different looks, different colors, different tread patterns, different heights, and different widths. So a lot of variety here, but I wanted to touch on one last thing before we move on from wheels and tires, and that would be WILDCARDS. You knew I had to do it. If you watched my 4-door FJ cheat code build, you saw these chrome Djcrawler deep dish wheels. And then I mentioned earlier, I had the Power Hobby Armor tires. So I figured might as well mount these guys up. Knew they would fit. It was just a question of the chrome, but I think it was a good decision. I'm really liking it against the shiny links here, against the silver shocks. I think it looks killer. Man, just awesome looking. And of course, we know the clearances all check out. It's the same exact size as those MTs, but look at that. That looks super proper. So we've got 4 killer sets now, including these WILDCARDS. We got the chrome black, bronze, and gray. I don't know if there is much more colorway we can throw at this guy, but I feel like I could mount tires and wheels to this all day long. But in lieu of doing that, let's go ahead and get a battery in it. And as promised, let's do a little tabletop testing. All right, figured we'd start out rolling on chrome, since that's what we ended sitting on. Let's see if we can't get this guy twisted up here. Let's see what we can do with all this weight. Look at the compression on these tires.
probably the softest set with these stock foams, and the fact that there's not a lot of foam, not a lot of tire height. But man, just super smooth. Come in a little tighter here. See if we can't get this climb. Handling all that weight pretty nice. Look at that rear tire, wow. Just great clearances on the tire sizes here, all the way around. Man, that looks so sick. Just so much control with this motor and that ESC, just what a pair. Just creeping. All right, let's readjust. All right, let's see if we can get all twisted coming down here. Uh-oh, let's back it up and get a little better approach. There we go. Come on, right on down at the camera. Let's creep it, drop it down. No problem, just super smooth. Just so much control. And those oil shocks make all the difference with this kind of weight. Just super nice. All right, we're gonna come back at this and get a little rear view shot. That big wagon and that nice looking weathered wood in there. A little peek in there. As we climb, so we can get that rear tire to bite. And there we go. All right, see if we can cue this up, hit these ramps, and bring it on home. Got these ramps a little bit narrow for this wide tire setup, but I think we can get on them. There we go. All right, let's take one last look at these deep dish beauties before we move on to our next set to test. Just gorgeous, gorgeous. So I'm not sure what we're gonna mount up next, but I'll figure something out. Next up, we've got the Stalkers in gray, the alien compound. Let's see if we can grab a hold here. Oh, looks like it. We have to move a little closer. Here we go. Nice squish. And remember, these are full, uncut, medium and firm foams. And we're still getting tire squish. Look at that. Easy peasy. All right, see if we can creep it down. Yeah, no problem. All right, we'll creep it up this way. Get a good look at these tires. And they just don't look like they're gonna do anything, or that they would do anything with that tread pattern, but I'm telling you, 24 Yep is telling you, these things are stickier than snot. They're just gonna go right up, but no problems. Look at that. Look at that rear tire, looks so good. Right on up. It's a little reposition here as we creep over. Easy does it. See if we can get on these ramps again. Guess I shouldn't be trying to come at these at a weird angle. Get that right on down. Get that rear tire up. There we go. All right, we're gonna come at this at a funky angle. See if we can get some bite here and not flop this thing over. And get that rear tire up on the ramp. Look at that, no problem. Just loving watching it work. Right on up, no problem for these sticky tires. My gosh. See if we can't creep this guy down without just totally flopping it. A little bit of a slide on the belly there, but no problem. Let's see if we can dig out of this hole. And then we're gonna bring the rear down, easy. All right, we'll do a little wide shot and just watch a hole climb here. Easy enough. We're gonna take this hard line and get that far tire up on the corner. You hear those tires doing some work right there. No problem at all. All right, let's take one last close look here. Let me slow it down here and creep in. But man, that's a super happy accident that these were not black, because I think that gray is working just perfectly with this insignia white. Just looks fantastic. But we've got more colors, more styles, more treads to try out here. Let's bring on the bronze. Take a little look at these as we creep over this farm truck kind of tire look. But again, bronze coming through, always looking strong. Just about any color you put those on, they look good. And no exception here. Look at those. All right, we've got a little reset of the obstacles here. A new set of tires, so I figured we'd get kind of a new set of obstacles. Kind of take it on a little bit of a side hill climb. See if we can get that front to bite. There it is. Get that steering overdrive. We're just sliding this rear end around. If we can get it climbing, there we go. Hang on, look at that. Boom. And right back down. Look at that. No problem at all. We're going to come back at this a little different here. If we can't come up the back. No problem. Looks like it. And right back down. Man, there's so much control. It's such a nice system here. We're really digging it. Come back at this, see what we can do. Just coming up this wall, pretty much straight on. Get over these ramps. See if we can miss this grill, get a tire to catch. Oh, almost had it. There it is. Oh, there we go. Nice. We'll take it right on down. take one last look at these bronze beauties here and creep it over. So if you haven't tried any Djcrawler wheels, definitely check them out. Always nice and scale looking, as you see. They have some great offerings, some narrows, some deep dish, and just gorgeous wheels and very affordable. So anyways, moving on, we got one more to look at. Last but not least, I think these may be my favorites. The original black deep dish. They just give it that nice resto mod vibe. It worked so well with all the black trim. And man, I really like this tread pattern on these Power Hobby tires. See if we can get up on that slick metal there. There we are. But just digging the black on white, just a classic color scheme there. Take this little wall, get all tilted here. Let's see if we can come down, kind of side hill this guy. See if we can twist it up without tipping it over here. Ooh. See if we can control it. Look at that. Luckily we got a lot of weight there. Front end, keep it planted. Got the ramps out of the way. Let's see if we can do a little wall climb through this little metal dish. See if that's even remotely possible with this small tire combo. You're gonna kind of have to bridge this gap. See if we can slide us over here as we're climbing. Get a little better view. Looks like we're gonna be able to grip. See if we can get across this gap, span this. We're gonna have to float that passenger rear tire. Ooh, we kind of missed the driver's rear. Just hanging on. See if we can settle it down. Looks like it. Man, look at that control. Let's bring us on down here and check out the descent. Let's see if we can come down this edge. Nice and slow. Boom. Easy does it. All right, figured we'd finish this out on the RTI ramp. That's the only thing we really haven't looked at with any of these sets. It's just the overall kind of flex. Let's see, watch that back tire. Looks like we are maxing out and just kissing that back tire on the ground. So not too bad. Let's roll it forward into this little cradle. No problem. But man, just look at these tires, these rims. Just loving this wide tire deep dish look. Just super sick. So very happy with it. And like I say, I think these black ones are my original favorites. Of course, they were kind of my original thought on the build, but you'll have to let me know what you think your favorites are out of the 4 sets. But I think any way we go here, they're all pretty killer on this wagon. But anyways, I think that does it for tabletop testing. Well, I think that is gonna wrap this build up. And I think this is a worthy addition to the Willy collection here. I mean, I think this thing just looks stellar. I think it may be my favorite out of the 3, just because of the wagon body. Something about it. I'm a sucker for the SUV style. But man, just overall, I think this thing is a 10 out of 10 success here. Really digging the wood bed and loving the new addition he's doing with the interiors. I think that is just a killer little detail to have. You know, even just the dashboard and steering wheel. I mean, just all the little bits there, just super cool. And of course, tail lights on this, and I'm a sucker for lights. If you watch any of my builds, you know they're all fully lit pretty much. But anyways, I want to say thanks for coming along on this one. It's definitely been a fun one. And like I say, this is one of my favorite builds, and definitely I think my favorite Willy build so far. But if you follow WTMicro, you may know he's about to drop a brand new Willy body. It's a Willy truck, but it is an extended cab. So it's going to be a little longer. I'm guessing it's a Gladiator wheelbase, so you know I'm going to pick one up and build one. So definitely look out for that in the future. And if you want one, definitely check out WTMicro on Etsy. You can pick up these great Willy's bodies, FJs, and I'm not going to spoil it, but he's got a brand new body series coming out. 4-letter word, starts with an F, ends with a D, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. So if you're into those, definitely check them out. But I think with that, we're going to wrap this build. And until next time, thanks for watching.